Matt Taylor of Brighton, UK is one of the more colourful of the Satan hunters, happy to promote and support his fellow Satan hunters regardless of what they have done.
Total bullshit, but hey, let's carry on.
Taylor has a notorious reputation both in his local community and online for being crazy and creepy.
Go on then, go and find me one neighbour who thinks I'm creepy.
He might be one moment standing for Parliament with a promise of sacking the Queen in favour of a mad Maori fraud from New Zealand, or the next moment being investigated for indecent images of children.
How dare James Hind suggest John Manoa is a fraud? There is no evidence to suggest this, and this shows the lies, deceit and misinformation that James Hind is spreading across the nation. Shame on these Satanists.
He seems to attract the constant attention of the police, from stalking women to his activities with boys in a local woodland.
All these hideous allegations against me, none of them have been found to be true. They are all malicious lies, deceits, and allegations intended to put me in prison within the next 2 years. I only got until November, and then I'm free. Free to be me.
There has been a great deal of speculation online asking if Matt Taylor had served in the army, and why he apparently had been booted out. The speculation forced Matt Taylor to publish photos of himself in the army, which caused me to start digging around. What I uncovered confirms that Matt Taylor served in the army, why he was booted out, and why he is probably the disturbed man he is today.
Nasty allegations, the lot of them. None of them have been proven to be true.
The creepy video about the murder of Matt Taylor's mum. A YouTuber published a creepy video that Matt Taylor made, where he speaks about his mother being paranoid about him killing her, of her suicide, and the investigation by the Orkney police, who initially believe he had killed his mum. Of particular interest is that the video mentions that Taylor had been dishonorably discharged from the army and had to abandon his mother in Orkney to travel back to England to sign his army discharge papers, shortly before his mother died in an apparent suicide. In one post, Taylor had called his mother a witch and his father a cult leader.
Haha, well, let's not beat around the bush about what my mother or father was. Let's get one thing straight. I wasn't dishonorably discharged, and nor was I court-martialed for going AWOL. Get your facts straight, you lying Satanist.
Matt Taylor, his mum, and the loss of his military career. Newspaper articles and other information suggests that Matt Taylor served many years in the army, his chosen career, having passed his training, and probably served as a military policeman. In 1998, Matt Taylor's mother suffered a stroke that left her paralyzed and in a wheelchair. In 2001, the dregs of society in Brighton was taking advantage of his mother and entering her home, leading to a fear her life was in danger. Matt Taylor, feeling that he had to do something about the dire situation his mother faced, made a fateful decision to go AWOL from the army. Both mother and son fled to Europe, traveling from country to country, suffering loss of their possessions and running out of money. They found their way to Orkney. Matt Taylor was arrested in Orkney and court-martialed for going AWOL from the army.
How many times do I have to tell you? I wasn't court-martialed for going AWOL.
Unlike in civilian life where an individual can immediately quit their job and nothing happens, this is different in the military, which comes under military law, where people literally sell their body and soul to serve Queen and country for a fixed period of time. Matt Taylor was imprisoned at the military prison in Colchester known as the Glass House. After serving his sentence, Taylor was demoted and dishonorably discharged from the army. Whilst Matt Taylor was in military prison, the situation deteriorated for his mother in Orkney, facing eviction and homelessness. After being discharged, Taylor returned to Orkney, but then had to return back to England or face arrest, as he had not signed his military discharge papers. Taylor had an argument with his mother, and then returned back to England, when he was told his mother had died by an apparent suicide. The Orkney police initially suspected that Taylor had killed his mother, such was the sudden speed of his departure shortly before his mother was found dead. Nothing came of the investigation, and thus it is apparently considered to be suicide.
For the love of God, I wasn't dishonourably discharged from the army, though I was reduced in ranks and dismissed for the possession of illegal drugs, for the possession and distribution of illegal drugs, which I gave 5 cannabis joints to my dying mother as she lay on her deathbed. Rest in peace, my dear old mum. I love you.
Conclusion. I think Matt Taylor was deeply attached to his mother and faced a difficult situation of being trapped in his military role whilst his mother suffered an increasingly dangerous situation at home. Taylor made what was in the end a pointless and devastating choice to sacrifice his military career, savings and liberty to help his mum, which still ended in her death. It is probably not surprising that the years 2001-2002 was the turning point that produced the sort of demented and twisted creature that we now find in Matt Taylor today.
Who are you for calling me twisted and demented? Someone who pretends to be a 12-year-old boy online to learn everything they can about certain individuals. You're the only person I know who admits to watching CP. Now go around away, James Hind. You are sickening. And you're stalking me.
Regardless of the tragedy that must have deeply impacted Matt Taylor, there is no justification for the suffering and terror Taylor is inflicting upon his many victims, even upon innocent children. Taylor walks a dark road to his own destruction, and perhaps he needs to examine his own mind, in the manner he currently has been examining the minds of his victims. He attempts to form insight into his behavior, how his deeds are impacting the lives and minds of his victims, and then makes choices to become a better human being.
Matt is, by nature, a very distrusting man. Having spoken to him live, it was clear he can hold a reasonably stable line, which is interesting, but that's conflicted by his emotional psyche. If he could balance these two, then I think he could be entertaining, but he must address the past and be prepared to say sorry to those he knows were hurt by his actions. I don't mean me, I mean others from the past. I don't know if he'll ever get to that point. I hope he does. It might close doors and open better ones. I don't know. I agree the past has clearly been extremely challenging and frankly, an emotional wrecking experience. One thing is clear, the next move is his. I for one hope that's a better and more positive one, but that's a long way ahead from now.
Skilled social media expert slips into crime. Matt Taylor of Brighton is a Satan hunter with a talent for multimedia and marketing that he could have made a career and business from. Taylor devotes his life to a focus upon quality multimedia content such as graphics and video editing for the entertainment of around 20 active followers, of which half hate him. It is an unfortunate situation that Taylor prostitutes his talent to a niche few, which will end in his self-destruction. Matt Taylor is another Satan hunter who prefers the epic fantasy of God complex, where he is the tragic victim hero with the solution to an invention of great evil, rather than to walk a mundane successful life of a multimedia content provider. Taylor prefers the fantasy of the Queen being a baby-eating shape-shifting reptile, of being the man who will replace the Queen of England with a sectioned Maori fraudster living in New Zealand. Taylor prefers to claim to be a comedian, politician and journalist without putting in the dull and ordinary effort to get experience, recognition and qualifications in those things. Taylor prefers to target specific people with false allegations, stalking and harassment, that has resulted in him coming to the attention of the courts and a suspended prison sentence. The adverse publicity, the criminal convictions and an online crowd of victims makes it hard for Taylor to rise above his current hole he finds himself in, and he walks a path that will end in jail.